What's going on, everybody? It's Joe Martucci at the Press of Atlantic City. Welcome to the Something in the Air podcast. It is the middle of summer, and for this episode, we're with somebody who pretty much lives summer all year round. We're with Matt Lanza, who now lives in Houston, but for much of his growing up childhood, he was in Summers Point. He is the managing editor for Space City Weather, which is pretty similar to what I do here at the Press. He's writing articles. He's very active on social media, working in the digital space, working in media as well. So we kind of do a lot of the same things. He's a Rutgers grad too, which I am. So we get along there. Actually, he is huge on social media, specifically on Twitter. So if you're in the weather world, you may know Matt already, but was really happy to be with him, talk with him about his life. He went from New Jersey to New York to LA to Houston. So he's been around the country, but he always calls Summers Point and the Jersey Shore home. So without further ado, let's turn it over to Matt Lanza. Okay, and we're here with Summers Point native, Rutgers meteorology grad, now meteorologist for Cheniere Energy, as well as SpaceCityWeather.com, coming to us all the way from Houston, Texas. Matt Lanza, welcome to the show.
What's up, Joe? Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, no, great to have you as well. Always good to have Rutgers people keep it in the circle for today. So that's always a good thing. And I definitely want to chat with you here. And I think a lot of people are going to appreciate this because in some ways, we kind of do the same thing with you with Space City Weather, me what I'm doing here, and you obviously from South Jersey. So I thought this was a great connection to have. I'll start off with this. It is July when this show is airing. What's the one thing you miss about being at the Jersey Shore, Matt? And when was the last time you were at the Jersey Shore during the summer?
Oh boy, the last time I was at the Jersey Shore during the summer was probably 2019. I think it was there in June.
Okay. Okay. So not that long ago.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But it feels like forever. I'm looking forward. We're going back actually this summer. So it's going to be great to get back there. Probably miss the most about the shore is the boardwalk pizza, to be quite honest. I mean, the pizza here in Houston, you can get some good food. There's great food in Houston. Houston's an amazing food city, but the pizza options, it's just not the same. It's just not the same. So I am a pizza guy, and yeah, I miss it.
Okay. Are you going to throw out a spot that Matt will usually go to when he's back?
Wasn't sure, but I'm team Manco and Manco, and I have been since I was a little kid all the way. I just love it. It's just great. Love it.
Let's talk about Space City Weather. It is it's SpaceCityWeather.com. It is it's covering Houston area. You guys are doing blogs. You know, obviously you're very active on social media and very popular on social media, I should say as well. In fact, you're so popular, Matt, you have your own day named after you in the city of Houston. It is Space City Weather Day on June 8th. So congratulations to that. I know that was just announced to you. But just tell me like what you're doing and, you know, how you see this kind of segment of meteorology, which isn't your traditional, you know, when you think about media and meteorology, you're thinking about, you know, someone on television, just how that has expanded and where you kind of see it going in the future.
Yeah, it's a good question. So Space City Weather started. So I work with a gentleman named Eric Berger, and he's oversees the whole operation. And, basically he used to work for the Houston Chronicle, writing about science and space and all that. And, he left the Houston Chronicle, but before he did, he was looking for some help to do his weather posts there. He had built a little bit of a following on weather information, from the Chronicle. The Houston Chronicles is equivalent to the Press of Atlantic City here in Houston. When he left, he had this following of people, but he was like, we really should probably do something. And he asked, do you want to start our own independent site to do weather stuff and, just see where it goes. So I was like, yeah, sure. That'd be fine. Let's try it and see what happens. And it worked out well. We started this in 2015, I believe. We got through one flood in 2016, and then we had Hurricane Harvey in 2017. And that was sort of the game changer. Our whole philosophy was kind of built on, not hyping weather. So we're going to tell you what you need to know. We're going to tell you when you need to know, but we're not going to overdo it. We're not going to, get too dramatic. We're not going to go crazy with how, significant the storm's going to be when it's just going to be a rainstorm. It rains a lot in Houston, right? And it can flood from time to time when it rains hard. But we don't want to waste our energy on that. We want to focus on, when you need to actually start making preparations for significant flooding or a hurricane or something like that, or a freeze, whatever, element we have down here in Texas that gets thrown at us. And so we've tried to differentiate ourselves in that regard. But I mean, essentially, we are doing the same thing. It's just a different format. Some people like to consume their weather on the TV still, but other people would prefer reading. And that's sort of the audience that we're targeting. And then I think that we do a pretty good job with is writing these forecast discussions and elaborating on things in ways that you can't on television and ththings like that, kind of similar to what you do. And I think it really does hit with people, especially in markets like this, where there's just a lot of weather's a big deal. And, you can sort of set yourself apart from other people in the market, maybe by doing what you do.
Yeah. And that was going to kind of lead into my next question, which is, the media weather market, in some ways you could say it is saturated because of social media, right? You can always have your amateur meteorologist or high school meteorologist who develop large followings. And for the most part, they're doing a good job, but may not have necessarily the training or the skills, to go forward. But in other ways, it's not, because, you really are, Space City Weather, the only place where you're probably going for consistent written information about the weather. And my question is what's your biggest strength, you think, compared to, your competitors in the region? And what's one thing you would like to do more of with Space City Weather to get the word out to people, in Houston, parts of, what is it, southeastern Texas? What is it, Matt?
Yep.
South Texas, southeastern Texas.
We are Southeast Texas.
Gotcha.
So I think the strength that we have is that we have that ability to go off on whatever we want. We're not, we have one sponsor for our site, and that's really the only entity that we have to worry about. And even they're very hands off. They don't tell us what we can and can't do. We do what we want to do. And nobody says anything to us about that. So we try to go into as much detail as possible and explain what we know, what we don't know, what the scenarios are, why we think it's important to pay attention, why we don't think it's important. All the scenarios we have, we have more than 3 minutes to be able to do that. So I feel that that's one of the real strengths and advantages of being able to do the way that we do it. And I think one of the things that it also does is it gives us freedom to explore new ways of maybe how we communicate information. So for example, after Hurricane Harvey, we realized that people in this area were very tense anytime it rained. I guess is probably the most delicate word I could use. Myself being one of them. Everybody was afraid of flooding, and everybody was afraid that this was going to be the next that. And so what we had to do was kind of rein people's expectations in. And what we created was a flood scale. Basically, we went back, we looked at historical storms and how much flooding they caused in the Houston area, and we came up with a 1 to 5 scale. And now anytime before we have, a significant rain event, something more than just daily thunderstorms that are going to cause some localized flooding or something, we will say, hey, this is we think this is going to be a level 1 flood with potential to go into 2 or 3 or whatever. But basically what we want to do is manage people's expectations to let them know right off, this is not going to be another Harvey. This is not going to be another Allison. This is not going to be another tax day, whatever, storm flood we've had here that you want to talk about. And, just kind of helping, along those lines. And I think it's really helped to improve how we communicate and what we do. And I'm hoping in the future that we can continue to do that, but start to get into maybe more underserved communities that wouldn't necessarily consider using us as an option, because those communities are the ones that flood worse down here. As it's always that, right? Where they're always the hardest hit communities wherever you are. And so those are the people that we really should be trying to reach a little bit harder. So I'm hoping that we can, maybe do that as time goes on.
Matt, it sounds like there's a lot of similarities between where you grew up in Summers Point, southeastern New Jersey, and Houston. Flooding obviously is on the tops of everybody's mind here, if you live a longer near the coast in South Jersey from the tidal flooding. You, of course, Houston being, near the Gulf of Mexico. And like you just said, flooding's an issue as well. Tropical concerns, admittedly, we don't get the big tropical systems like you do, but it's still something we talk about often. And of course, for distinct seasons, is there anything specific you think you took from your days hanging out in Summers Point that you could bring over to Space City weather, you think you have brought over?
Yeah, I think that it's an appreciation that, in South Jersey, the weather's a big deal everywhere, right? But I feel like certain communities have sort of a history with weather. And, one of the books I have that I've always really loved is the book Great Storms of the Jersey Shore. And it's basically a coffee table book, but it's a history book too. And it explains all the different storms of the past, the nor'easters and the hurricanes. And I was a huge nor'easter person growing up. I loved those storms. I thought they were just the most fascinating things. Always disappointed when it rained instead of snowed, but they were just to me the coolest storms. And I sort of developed an appreciation that those have the ability to also cause significant harm and significant damage. And carrying that and understanding that it's not just, this is not just a big weather event that's causing a lot of damage. I mean, these are weather events that can impact people's lives and their livelihoods. And a place, like the Jersey Shore that's, very heavily driven by summer tourism, and the weather has a big impact on that, and things like, all those things kind of stuck with me and allowed me to kind of understand that, you're not just forecasting weather, you're forecasting weather for people and for people's livelihoods. And you're trying to help them make the best decisions that they can make to help themselves, their businesses, whatever, their communities, to get through significant weather events. And I think there's a lot of that now in Houston, especially after the last 5 or 6 years where we've had significant floods, that, it goes beyond any sort of, it's just another storm, it's just a weather event. It is an event that impacts a lot of people and can cause a lot of problems. So I thought those are good lessons to take with me.
And let's give a shout out to Larry, Margaret, and Scott, who wrote the book, Great Storms of the Jersey Shore. I've read it as well. It is, it used to be on my coffee table. Now it's not, but it's a really in-depth look. And actually what I thought was interesting, there's a lot of Long Beach Island focus, which I feel like you don't see too much of. So that was actually pretty interesting as well. Scott lives in LBI, or at least is near LBI. So I know he focuses there a lot. We have a minute left on this part of the segment, Matt, but I do want to ask you, Sandy, right? Where were you? I know you weren't here unless I'm mistaken, but, just from an outsider, kind of an outsider's perspective, you're in Summers Point most of your life. You hear about these storms, but now it actually came, what were just overall thoughts on in about 30 or 45 seconds?
Yeah, the first thing was that this was the storm that I drew up on paper as a kid that was never supposed to happen. You always come up with these dramatic, storm scenarios when you like weather, and that was Sandy. And it was just incredible to witness. I was, at that point, I moved to Houston. So I was here in Houston. I was working for Deutsche Bank, and I was helping them manage their New York office and get all the crisis people where they needed to be, keep people out of harm's way, try to keep our facilities clean. But it was a lot of communicating with my parents and telling them what to expect and, how bad it was going to be. And it was just remarkable, just the amount of impact and damage that it caused. And, that was incredible for me to witness, even from afar.
Great. All right. Well, hey, everybody, thanks for listening so far. We have Matt Lanza here. We're going to be back on the other side of the break. We're going to talk more about his life, both in Houston and South Jersey. This is the Something in the Air podcast. All right, we are back. Thank you for listening to the Something in the Air podcast, brought to you by the Press of Atlantic City in conjunction with Stockton University. Joined with us, Matt Lanza, Summers Point native, now lives in Houston. He is the managing editor for Space City Weather, also works for Cheniere. Did I say that right, Matt? Cheniere Energy? I got it. All right, cool. I have to hop back to the first part of the segment here. You said you feared it was a hurricane that you drew up when you were a kid and actually happened. Yeah. So I don't know many meteorologists that did that, because I did that when I was a kid too. And I just kind of thought everybody did it. And then I realized maybe it was just me, but now I realize it wasn't just me. You did that as well.
Yeah, it was you would always just like draw the map, and then this is the track of the storm, like this is going to be it, this is how we get hit. And it was just wild. And one of the things I did as a teenager, my parents got me a t-shirt that actually had a tracking map on the back of it, and you could draw the tracks of the storms, the latitude and the longitude and the permanent marker. Right. You literally wear the hurricane season on you. It was incredibly geeky but wonderful.
Man, you were way too cool in high school, man.
I was, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, we'll go with that. We used to have this it was like map of the United States on like a, just piece of paper. It was just outlined in black and then with the states. And then what I did was I took another piece of blank paper, taped it to the other side, and then I would draw like Europe and Africa on the one side with like the little island, like like Cuba and Hispaniola and everything. And then I would draw the little dots for like every 6-hour hurricane advisory and make all these different storms. And yes, they were mostly dangerous storms that hit New Jersey, but it was just incredible. It was, I don't even know. Like that was just the way to pass time, I guess.
Yeah, it's just the thing. I guess when you're a weather geek, for so long, a lot of us know for so long that's what we want to do and everything. And so I one thing I remember was I'm a Zennial, right? So I was the person that grew up without the computer, then got the computer, when I was a teenager. Yeah. And so Windows 3.1, there was a program called Windstorm, and you could plot each individual track and it would show up on a map and basically animate for you across. And this was like the most incredible thing to see as someone. Yeah, it was incredible. Like at that point in time, you're just like, this is crazy. And I'll never forget that. I still love that program. It was just one of my favorites. It was just so basic, simple, and wonderful.
Do you still use it?
No, I
don't. So like many meteorologists, I say it all the time when we do talks, when I'm doing different interviews and stuff, usually you're the only person that wanted to be a meteorologist. Was that the same for you in Summers Point? What was it like going to Rutgers and now you're with, a couple dozen meteorologists?
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. And so for the most part, I was the only person I knew at the time. And, for me, it was Hurricane Gloria that got me into it. It was probably a combination of things, but Gloria was the tipping point. And, we took my grandmother, she lived in Atlantic City, and we brought her to the mainland and, got her out into shelter, with that storm. And that was, just a wild, I don't remember details. I just remember sort of vagaries about it, but it was really cool. And so, as far as I knew in high school or through high school, I was the only person that really wanted to be a meteorologist. There were other people that were interested in weather, but nobody was really going to significantly pursue it. And that was the plan for their career that I knew of. But as it turns out, Mainland Regional High School has at least 3 other meteorologists that have graduated from there. So for per capita basis, it's pretty incredible.
That's pretty high.
Yeah.
Who were they? Would it be anybody that the people around here would know?
So probably not. Well, some people might know. Joe Bastardi actually went to Mainland Regional High School, and he's for those that may not know, a very big personality in the weather space, to say the least.
I think I would say most people probably recognize him from AccuWeather back in the day. I know I did when I was growing up, in the 2000s, watching his videos. Now he is on his own.
And I believe he was a Mainland. I think he graduated. I know he attended, but I think he graduated from Mainland. And there were a couple others, late 90s, early 2000s that most people probably wouldn't recognize, but they're off doing different things right now that are pretty interesting. One is in wind energy, and one works actually sort of has touched on the commodity space a little bit for energy weather stuff too. So pretty neat.
Gotcha. So you're at Rutgers, 2000, 2004. I think you were treasurer of the meteorology club. I was also on a e-board for meteorology club back in the day. I wasn't the treasurer, but I spent the money usually on pizza for the club events. Tell me, just kind of tell me what your time at Rutgers was like. And our times were a little different. We're gonna get a little in the weeds with the Rutgers stuff, but Rutgers was a little more of a divided place back when you were there as opposed to when I was there. I think when I first started, really, that's when all like Bush campus and Livingston campus and College Ave all kind of merged together. So we might have had slightly different experiences, but I'm sure we could talk about bus rides and Cook campus and the farm and all that stuff.
The double E is
the double E, of course.
Never forget the double E.
Many good times going down George Street.
Yeah, no, Rutgers was fantastic. Nothing but good things to say about the experience there. We had some really cool people in our class as classmates that I still talk to this day frequently, and they're off doing real interesting things elsewhere in the field: National Weather Service, energy space, reinsurance, all these different things that are just kind of really cool. We had a pretty good class, but the experience is great. The campuses, yeah, they were definitely divided. You definitely had your own identity for whatever campus you were on, and so for us it was Cook. And which I don't know if at that point it had become SEBS, School of Environmental and Biological Science, but it will always be Cook, no matter what.
Yeah, I think everybody. I have a SEBS degree. That was the first year when I first started in 2009. That's when we switched on over. But yeah, I mean, everybody calls it Cook. They still got the Cook College T-shirts. It's still Ag Field Day, not Rutgers Day. All that stuff.
Yeah, and it was wonderful. I love the Cook campus. It's just a great place to go because to me it felt like it was a good transition out of high school because it wasn't so big that it was overwhelming, but it was part of this gigantic university. So you kind of got the best of both worlds, where you're in a bigger place, but you weren't completely overwhelmed. Yet you had access to whatever you needed as far as a big university goes. And it was a great time. And yeah, the meteorology club was a lot of fun. We brought in some speakers. I think we had Paul Cosin in at one point. We had who else do we have?
Really?
Brian Norcross come up to give a talk as well. He worked Hurricane Andrew down in Miami. So we had some real interesting. We were pretty active, not just our class, but the classes that were around us were pretty active with our club and bringing in people and trying to do stuff. And I was my class treasurer in high school, and I thought that was the most logical next step to become the treasurer of the Met Club. So,
were you guys turning a profit?
Oh, always.
Of course, there you go. You need a treasurer, Matt your guy. So after Rutgers, you went into broadcast, I believe, directly out of Rutgers. And we should say, because again, this is something I say, I do talks. It's actually a minority of people who graduate with a meteorology degree who go into media. I think it's you might even know, but it's something as low as like 20% or something like that. But anyway, you did go, and actually, you were pretty lucky because a lot of times your first job in television is taking you far and wide, but you were actually just one state north. You were in upstate New York.
Yeah, I applied to a whole bunch of jobs. I was willing to do that and go far and wide and do whatever I had to do. But I wanted to give the broadcasting thing a try and see what happened. And so I did actually get offered to work it was a part-time job, but in Syracuse. And that was kind of one of the big keys. It's like, okay, do I want to take a part-time job and move somewhere? Well, not that far away. So, we'll give it a try and see what happens. And I worked at a Barnes and Noble to supplement, the income for the other 20 hours a week. But it was a great experience. And so I worked for SYR TV, which at the time was known as WIXT in Syracuse. That was my first real experience with lake effect snow. They had their own Doppler radar. The station had its own radar because the NWS radars sometimes don't sample the lake effect snow coming off of Lake Ontario very well because the beam goes too high into the atmosphere, and lake effect snow is very shallow. That was just a real eye-opening experience because first of all, growing up in South Jersey, you're always on the wrong side of the rain snow line usually, although I want to say in the last 10 years or so, that's changed a little bit. I feel like it has. But up there,
except for the last two, Matt.
Yeah.
Before the last two, yes. Then the last two have just been nothing.
Just so disappointing.
Very disappointing.
I can't tell you how many disappointing days I had as a kid. But for the weather, not for other reasons. It's
right, of course, professionally speaking.
But it was a great experience, and working in Syracuse and just kind of getting to know that with some great people. Dave Longley, who was the morning meteorologist in Syracuse at that station, who now is assistant news director there. Just the right person that I needed to have as a mentor. Because one thing I lacked in college is a really good mentor, and he was the right person for that. And he kind of walked me through and explained, this is what people care about, this is what they don't care about. And really gave me a good sense of how to go about that, and also how to forecast a little better too, which was great.
Gotcha. And then so you were in Syracuse, and then you went to Utica. So you actually took a short jump, after Syracuse.
Yeah, such a great opportunity. It was a full-time job that opened up in Utica. It was 40 miles from Syracuse. I was like, I have to go for this. It's a weekend job. Like I'm the candidate for this position. So like
Yeah.
I went as far as to actually drive my tape to Utica and basically physically hand it to the news director, and let them have at it. And I did a screen test there, and they were good with it, and offered me the job, and I took it without hesitation. To get full time, because while I loved Syracuse and the people were great where I was at, there was just not going to be any opportunity for advancement. I didn't see the part time becoming a full time at any point. So I wanted a full time job, and got more lake effect snow in the Mohawk Valley, central New York, and it was again a great experience. We had some pretty incredible lake effect storms while I was up there. I'll never forget the winter of 2007. We had about a 10-day period of lake effect snow at the end of January and beginning of February that dumped over 100 inches of snow in some parts of the northwest part of our viewing area. And then it was followed up by a Valentine's Day blizzard where we got close to 3 feet of snow in Utica. And then we got another 1.5 feet of lake effect on top of that 2 days later. So it was just, at that point, I think I had enough snow for a while. It was just incredible to witness.
Geez, Matt, I think you saw more snow in that one winter than you did in your whole life in South Jersey.
Probably true, actually.
Oh my God. So it scared you away because you went all the way to Los Angeles after that. You were like, I'm done with this. I can't deal with snow anymore.
So one of my friends from Rutgers actually worked in the energy industry, and he was in Baltimore, and I saw what he was doing. I was like, this is pretty cool. I at that point, I got a little frustrated with, I wanted to kind of move on to like a Buffalo or an Albany, some other TV market that was a little bit bigger and a little bit more challenging. And it just wasn't happening. So my impatience kind of kicked in. And I'm like, all right, I'm done. But he worked in energy, saw what he did, loved it. And so I started applying to energy jobs, and actually did so for about 1.5 years. And then it took a while, and then ended up moving to California in 2009 in the middle of winter, which was quite a change.
Yeah.
Yeah, hung out in LA for 2 years forecasting for Southern California Edison. Which was a whole different experience, Santa Ana winds, terrain, all these things that I just really hadn't gotten, real experience with in the East. So it really made for a good challenge.
Sure. And then we have about another minute and a half left, but just tell us what you do at Cheniere Energy, and, how that impacts like the everyday person, because I think people might not always think about energy and meteorology, but it's I would say, a pretty hot field and weather.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's so basically I forecast weather for traders in the natural gas space, and basically give them information. And we also have a couple of assets that we forecast around that are on the Gulf Coast. So I forecast weather for how the wind and fog and hurricanes and thunder storms are going to impact those facilities on a day-to-day basis. So it helps keep people safe. It helps keep people informed. It helps make our traders give the best information to make the best decision they can, the most economical decision they can for buying and selling. I think from at a real high level, at your local utility, I don't know if this exists up there, but some utilities that are larger have meteorologists on staff that will help them make decisions on whether to buy or sell, based on what the weather forecast is. And that can have a big impact on what you end up paying for electricity over time. Because if you have a really bad forecast and really bad information, you're not going to make a good economical decision based on a big weather event, and you may be paying more for electricity, and that gets passed down to the ratepayer. So it becomes kind of a big deal.
It's all like very interesting. And one of these days I got to do an in-depth interview, maybe with you, about this, because it does impact people very distinctly. And we just, I would say a lot of people, myself, just aren't aware of it. But Matt, unfortunately, we are out of time here. So we're going to have to wrap it up. But it was great chatting with you. It was great seeing you.
Yeah.
Even if on Zoom, I'm sure I'll catch you at some point. If you're coming down the shore this year, let me know. I can pop on by and say hi.
Yeah.
But we're gonna have to wrap it up there, Matt. You want to just give everybody a plug where they can find Space City Weather?
Yeah, sure. Go to spacecityweather.com if you want to find out what's happening in the Houston area. And we do a tropical update every week as well, just on the broader tropics. So if you're interested in that, you may want to check that out too. And I am at Matt Lanza on Twitter. And you can also find us at Space City WX as well. And we're on Facebook.
Beautiful. Great. All right, Matt, thanks so much. We appreciate it. This is the latest Something in the Air podcast. We will be back with you. New episode first Wednesday of August. We're going to recap the month of July with New Jersey State climatologist and my birthday buddy, Dr. Dave Robinson. Till then, take care, stay safe, and we'll be back with you soon.